Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I am talking about The Maleficent Seven by Cameron Johnston. This is from Angry Robot Books, and it is the first fantasy novel that I've read in quite some time. Uh, because of that name, because of that picture, and in this book, in a nutshell, we have Black Heron. She is a demonologist and a villain who is taking over this land. And she has six horrible people as her captains, and they're on the eve of fulfilling all of her goals. And the Black Heron just disappears. She leaves. 40 years later, Black Heron is back. There is a greater threat to the country, to the land, the Lucent Empire, basically religious fanatics that are just moving across the land, slaughtering people, slaughtering heretics, converting a few. It seems like they slaughter more than they convert, although they have a pretty big army. And they're heading for the small town of Tarnbrook, where Black Heron has been living for the past 40 years, raising her family, and she wants to put a stop to them. So she gathers her six captains, and they make a last stand at Tarnbrook. That's it in a nutshell. So, obviously, Maleficent Seven, Magnificent Seven, Seven Samurai. Doesn't quite work, but that's the original. So I love this cover. I've not read anything by Cameron Johnston before, but I may have to read more because I really enjoyed this. This is not your daddy's fantasy. This is not Lord of the Rings type of stuff. This is, I guess, grimdark. Let's see. They usually have. They have file under. It doesn't say grimdark, but it does say heroes or horrors, flames and faith, blood and guts, hell demons. So those are their keywords. But it is definitely a dark, violent, bloody story, just the way I like it. Excuse me. So, yeah, we start off. Our cold open, essentially, as I like to say, is Black Heron, her generals. I think I said captains, but they're generals. Sometimes they're captains. I don't know. But either way, they're up on this hill. They're watching. They're about to lay siege to the final castle. They've got all these their enemies up on pikes. They're wagering on who's going to last the longest during torture. And then Black Heron just leaves. Doesn't tell anybody. Just disappears. And as I said, we jump 40 years. And we eventually learn what happened to Black Heron. We learn what happened to all of the other, her other people, her generals, captains, whatever the hell they are. Man, I just finished this, but I have a headache, so please bear with me. Either way, we get sort of a second cold open after the original, where we meet the Falcon Prince, leader of the Lucent armies, and they go into this little town and just they're slaughtering people, heretics, worshippers of the old gods. They're worshiping the wrong god. They're slaughtered. Some are told they can convert, but most of them are slaughtered. So now we've met the enemy. Then we get to Black Heron. And again, she's been living in this village for 40 years, raising a family. But she knows that the Lucent Empire is never gonna stop until they've taken everything over. She does not want her family or her town to have to deal with it, to be slaughtered or converted. So she reaches out to her number one, maven, a necromancer, who wants her dead, but she basically Black Heron has something that she can hold over the necromancer and to get her to work with her. And she sends Maven the necromancer out to find everybody else, bring them back, and you have, now let's see, I'm going to have to look at the cover to make sure I remember everybody. So you have the necromancer, you have a vampire, you have a pirate queen, a war god, an orc, and an alchemist, who is the most monstrous of all. So we're introduced to all of these characters, and they are all horrible people. Because you have an orc and a vampire. But they're all fascinating characters. So they're all gathered up. They all end up in Tarnbrook. They are ready to fight, and then they fight. And that's, again, a second nutshell, I suppose. Larger nutshell. So what we have here is a very well-written, very entertaining, very violent, very bloody story of horrible people fighting a bigger horror. And there are levels of how evil the people in here are. I'm just going to keep saying people without the air quotes. Like the vampire, obviously. I mean, he's a vampire. The first thing we think, unless we're doing the whole Twilight or Anne Rice kind of thing, for me, vampire means monster. But he isn't the most monstrous character in the story. He treats he has a manservant, for lack of a better term, that he treats very well. He was the lord of this land that was wiped out by the Lucent Empire. And it doesn't seem like he was a tyrant or anything, or at least not in the worst sense of the word. The orc chieftain, this female orc chieftain, I wouldn't call her evil in the sense that she's just being an orc. You don't call, I mean, some people might, but you don't call sharks evil for being sharks, or tigers evil for being tigers when they eat somebody. There's usually a good reason for it. So the orc isn't really an evil character, just different than, our standards. And she's great, and I like the orcish way of life. I was reminded of Klingons from Star Trek. And the fact that, I mean, this isn't really a spoiler, it's not a major plot point or anything. I like that the orcs, they call their younglings grubs, and as an orc child grows, they choose the gender they are going to become. So essentially they're genderless until they've decided what they're going to be, which was interesting. And I like, there's little things like their orcs sort of change color to reflect their mood, and they consider humans untrustworthy because they can't do that. But essentially you can look at an orc and tell what mood they're in by the color they are. The pirate queen actually isn't a horrible person. I mean, she's not the greatest. She beats her crew when they disappoint her, but she's a fair leader, but she's a pirate. The necromancer, possibly the most evil. It's a toss-up, I think. The war god, great character, a lot of fun. Sort of, I think Scottish is what it's supposed to be. It's red hair, braided, he was the god of the Cahill Garoy, I think is how you would say it. which sounds Scottish to me. No offense meant if I'm way off. He was a fun character, and I loved the interaction, the interplay between he and the orc chieftain. Um, and then the alchemist is definitely, I can't decide if the alchemist or the necromancer are the most just evil and twisted. And I think the alchemist may edge out. And he's one of those that just wants to experiment on anything and anyone. Consequences be damned, people be damned. It's all about knowledge for him, but it's a sick and twisted knowledge. So all of these characters are brought together. They all have grudges against Black Heron, against each other, and the interplay between all of them is fantastic. And the character stuff is great. The action stuff is great. As the Lucent army is moving closer and closer to Tarnbrook, as Tarnbrook is preparing their defenses, and then once battle is met, there's some piratey water battle scenes, and there's of course land battle scenes at Tarnbrook, and schemes within schemes, and the battle goes both ways. The Lucent army loses some people. The Tarnbrookians lose people. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I would love to see something else in this world with these characters. Some may have made it, some may not. I don't know. But a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Again, for a dark, violent book, there's some disgusting stuff going on in here. That we get to know some of the normal human Tarnbrookians, as I call them, and I really dig some of them. There's one in particular, but I'm not gonna tell you who. You have to read it for yourself and see if you can figure out who it is. Again, great cover. There's one thing I'm really not sure of, because I can't figure it out. So, I'm going to say, obviously, this is Black Heron, front and center. Now, this is the vampire, someone with fangs. That's got to be the pirate queen. This is the orc. I don't know how well you can see. It's got to be the orc. And I'd say this is the war god. So, these two, I initially thought this was the necromancer, but then that would leave this to be the alchemist. But that doesn't make any sense, because the alchemist is just a little nerdy dude. So, is this supposed to be the alchemist? And somehow the necromancer is represented by this? I mean, it's got a scythe, kind of a death kind of thing. Because that's not what the necromancer looks like. So those two are unclear to me, but I love this cover, and I'm definitely going to have to check out some more Cameron Johnston. As I said, I would love to see more in this world with these characters. Really enjoyed this book. A lot of fun. My kind of fantasy. Dark and brutal. So, I just finished it earlier today. I have not rated it on Goodreads yet, but you know what? I think I'm going to give it 5 out of 5. I really dug it. So, there you go. A lot of fun. Angry Robot, the publisher I like. I don't read everything they've done. It's not all within my bailiwick, if I'm using that term properly. But they do a lot of things that I do like. So, highly recommended. The Maleficent 7. Just, yeah, really good stuff. Some very horrific things in here. So, Even if you're a horror fan, if you can handle the fantasy landscape, then I think a horror fan, because I know some people don't cross genres, but I think a horror fan could find something to like in here. Yeah, that's it. The Maleficent 7, Cameron Johnston. 5 out of 5 stars. That's what we're going with. First book finished in 2022. All right, so if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is at Ronan5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. That's all I've got for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.